Good afternoon. Welcome to the weekly livestock market update. Our Brownfield anchor reporter, Megan Grebner, with us as always to talk all things markets is University of Missouri, Scott Brown. Good afternoon, Scott. Ooh, are you muted?
Good afternoon, Megan. Now I'm not muted. How's that?
That is the first time since we've started this back up that I've had to remind you that you were muted. What a way to kick off the new year.
Exactly. Off to a rocky start. Let's see if we can save this one this week.
It's only up from here. Scott, this is our first full week into the new year, or our first really week of the new year. As we get things started, let's recap what happened this week in the markets.
If we start on the cattle side this week, live cattle basically were unchanged on the week. Those feeder cattle auctions, which really haven't been in business since before the Christmas break, we're steady to $4 lower this week. On the futures side, the February live cattle futures contract was down about 60 cents, while the March feeder cattle futures contract was down nearly $3. We continue to watch feed costs with that March corn futures contract up 11 cents this week. On the beef side, choice box beef prices were down about $3 this week, really led by what was some weaker rib prices. On the hog side of the equation, cash hogs up about $3.30 this week, while that February lean hog futures contract was actually down about $1.75. With strength in the pork cutout value of $6.20 this week, really led by what were stronger ham and belly prices this week.
Through midday today, those ham prices were significantly higher and definitely pushing pork values higher as well.
Pretty amazing how strong some of those components are, just given what we're doing these days on the pork side of the equation, Megan.
Let's talk slaughter numbers. We've kind of skipped over that really the last couple of weeks because of the shortened holiday processing weeks, but they came back and are full steam ahead in the new year.
Yeah, that's right. If we look at USDA's estimate for the week ending January 9th on the cattle side, 651,000 head of cattle to be slaughtered this week. That's actually up 1.2% from where we were the same period a year ago. So not comparing to the shortened holiday weeks that we've been through, but a year ago levels. So good run there on the cattle side. Also a really good run on the hog side as well. 2.849 million head of hogs slaughtered on the week ending January 9th. That's 154,000 head more than a year ago. That's up 5.7%. So pretty good run on the hog side of the equation.
I feel like we really can't. I mean, we talk about that 2.7 number being our sweet spot at least every week, obviously making up for a little bit of a slower couple of weeks due to the holidays. But can pork processors let off the gas anytime soon?
So I think we still have a lot of hogs to deal with here as we start 2021, and we also have some heavier hogs on average to deal with as we start 2021. So I think as we look ahead here, still some probably pretty good runs or pretty good supplies of pork coming on the market as we look ahead. You know, USDA's already estimating pork production for this first week of the year at 621 million pounds for pork. That is a number one week since the beginning of 2005, just to highlight how much supplies of pork have been growing here of late.
So are we really watching then our reports later this month and next month to see if this pork is moving somewhere or if we're starting to build up our stocks here at home?
Yeah, so I think the point here on pork, and you make it well, is that we're going to have big supplies. So we need demand to really stay with us. If we switch gears and looked at beef, I would say supply is not going to be growing as much now. Maybe in the short run, that's not completely the accurate statement to make, but more burdensome supplies potentially on the pork side that require pretty strong demand to make happen. And I'm thinking we'll stay pretty burdensome for maybe a lot of 2021 as well. So we'll wait and see, but it does tell us demand has to stay strong. And if not, we don't really want to get in that situation where we're backing up pork in freezers trying to deal with the large supplies that we have right now.
Monthly trade data also came out this week as we take a look. It's really kind of USDA is easing us into the new year. We start off with monthly trade data. As we look at those numbers for November, what's the biggest thing that jumps out to you?
Well, so number one, it continues to be positive in total when you think about beef and pork in particular. November beef exports up 6% from a year ago. November pork exports up slightly, about 10 million pounds from where we were a year ago. So strength there, but I always want to come to remind us that China mattered here. If you look at beef, pork, and chicken exports, all three, January through November of 2020, 1.1 billion pound growth in total exports, while to mainland China, we were up 1.8 billion pounds. So it tells you everybody else was down 0.7 billion pounds. So without China and the growth that we saw there in 2020, we would have a much different discussion about the trade side. Now, you can either look at that as the glass is half full or the glass is half empty here. For me, I can get excited about that kind of everybody else as we get into 2021 and the potential for them to grow. And we can look at some of the November data here, especially on the beef side. So for the first time in 2019, we had China, Mexico, Japan, Korea, all above year ago levels for November. We hadn't seen that again any other month so far of 2020. So maybe as some of these other countries get beyond COVID-19 as well, we're going to see some stronger demand for our products. As well, when you look at the pork side, China, Mexico, Japan, all three were also higher in November. So by and large, we continue to get some positive news out of that trade side, but the big growth that we saw is really all China driven.
How much does, two-part question, the global economic recovery and continued recovery to the global economy post-COVID or in this new COVID world and African swine fever play into how we continue to move forward in 2021 as it relates to trade and demand for U.S. beef and pork?
Yeah, so both those are hard questions to answer, I will say. So thank you for giving me tough questions in the first week of 2021. So for me, ASF's the harder one to predict. There's risk there of further ASF outbreaks. Those could either be happening outside the United States or within the United States. To me, that's the binary 0-1. We either have it happen or it doesn't happen. If it happens in other countries to the point where they're restricted in terms of trade, I think that's all positive for us in the United States. Likewise, if we were to have an ASF outbreak here, that likely is a pretty negative event. I guess as I look to the general economy question that you ask, I think we're going to find a number of countries that begin to recover, especially if these vaccines reduce the cases of COVID-19 that we see. And you couple that with what's been a dollar that's tended to weaken as we went through 2020. It makes our products more competitive in those world markets. I can be more excited about just the economic growth opportunities that could lead to more beef and pork leaving the United States.
Speaking of beef and pork leaving the United States, I'm going to throw China back in there for a second. It's pretty impressive to see the growth and the exponential growth of U.S. beef heading into China, continuing to go into China.
Yeah, that's true. So you look at the latest data, and I think we're now maybe the number one grain-fed beef source for China in the last couple of months of data. That all looks to me to be even more positive as we get into 2021. I've said for a long time, Megan, I think some folks getting a taste of what good U.S. grain-fed beef is like is a sure way to grow the demand for that product going forward. It is a win for us, and China could be a really big growth area in 2021. I mean, I sometimes I can get excited about the possibilities on the cattle front because we know supply is likely get more in check as we get through 2021, and you have China deciding they are wanting even more U.S. beef products. That's a win here, I think, from a price standpoint as we get into this year.
You're not wrong about how amazing U.S. grain-fed beef is, and what is I think it was Ambassador Brand said that said if you have it, you'll keep wanting it and keep wanting it, and they seem to be great customers at this point.
That's right. And I always say, if you put in front of customers or consumers what they want, that's a sure win for the industry. And the beef industry has just done a really good job. I think back to the 90s where every year it was beef demand got worse and worse and worse. And as we worked on quality, and we're now putting ourselves in the right place, and we don't want to lose focus on that strategy. Fulfilling what consumers want is a sure way to grow your industry. And I do think that that goes for consumers outside the United States as well.
And this is kind of a little rabbit trail off of that, but how fantastic has the genetics component been to risk management for beef producers? And that seems to be a thoughtful but fairly easy way to manage a little bit more risk and provide some upside potential.
Yeah, so it does. You and I talk about price risk management all the time, and I sometimes think that's a hard road for producers, cattle producers in particular, because they haven't done a lot of price risk management. And I often say, well, one way you can manage risk is by investing in the herd. That's much easier, I think, for a lot of producers to get their arms around that genetic increase. And I don't, so we can talk carcass quality, which sometimes is where people go right away, but feed efficiency, healthier cattle, all those things ensure higher prices for those calves when they go to the feed yard. I'm frankly shocked as you think about beef in particular, right? So wholesale demand for prime beef still seems to be going up in 2020. That's almost counterintuitive to what's been restaurants that have closed, and probably harder on some of the higher end restaurants. Yet despite that shutdown, you look at that again, wholesale demand for prime, it looks to still be growing in 2020. I don't think we're done with putting higher quality beef products in front of consumers that make that demand grow. I will sometimes say you don't want to be the last one to that dance, however, because over time, some of the premiums that likely exist for that higher quality continue to get eroded as we get more higher quality beef in the pipeline. But what a win, and genetics has played a role. I remember quite often hearing folks who will say, well, you feed those cattle long enough and they'll grade prime, which is a true statement. But I now believe we have genetic potential to get prime without feeding them forever.
Really kind of a short week for us in terms of reports. We're going to wrap up with jobs report, not necessarily wrapping up on a positive note to start 2021. What do we take away from this week's jobs or this month's jobs report?
Yeah, so it's not the direction we want to go, Megan, in terms of what we saw out of that December report. We got the numbers today that we lost 140,000 jobs in December. We weren't expecting a lot of growth in December, but no one expected a decline. That's the first decline that we've seen since April. We're still sitting here with an economy that's lost about 10 million jobs prior to the pandemic setting in. We need those 10 million jobs back at some point. It just tells you that it could still be fairly tough here for a while as we hopefully wait for vaccines that get new counts of COVID under control and get us back to where we can begin to open a little more than maybe what's been happening of late. So not good news there. And again, I think it's important to remind us that this first half isn't going to be the fun part. The second half may, in fact, be where we can get a lot more excited about cattle and hog prices.
Scott, anything else this week?
I think we've covered the major topics for the week, Megan.
Plenty for us to talk about next week's as well. Ahead of next week's reports that we have coming out.
Yeah, so USDA will give us WASDE on Tuesday, so we'll get a little better look at what the crop looks like that we harvested last fall. We'll get retail prices and end the week with consumer sentiment.
And that'll do it for us this week. Have a great weekend. Happy New Year.
Yeah, same to you,
Welcome.
Megan.
Thank you. Welcome to 2021.
That's right.
It is what it is so far. It's our weekly livestock market update delivered to your email box. Visit our website, brownfieldagnews.com. You can also submit questions and comments. And for all of the really great Brownfield podcasts, go to brownfieldagnews.com/podcast. Have a great weekend. Happy New Year. We'll see you next Friday. I'm Megan Grebner for Brownfield.